Evening, whatever time you're tuning in the program called What's Going on FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and I'm going to be boring you with some important information for the next hour. Well, I don't know if I want to say boring you, because if I say boring you, then, well, if I say boring, I think if I exceed those expectations, then it's all for the good. So I'm going to lower. I'm going to lower the expectation, and then I'm going to do what my expectations were at the beginning of the program. If I do better than that, then I've exceeded what I said I was going to do. So we'll see how that works out. If you put the expectation on the floor, I think we can arrive at exceeding those. But we're not going to bore you. We're going to bring you some information you would get anywhere else, except at FlintTalkRadio.com. This is a program that comes on at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. And today you're going to be especially endowed with some good information, because we are succeeded today, as if anyone can succeed us, in the program called What's Going On that comes on from 2 to 3. But at 3:30, we're going to have another sensational program that comes on for your listening and viewership pleasure. Two very lovely young ladies named the two Catherines here at the studio. The only one's named Catherine at FlintTalkRadio.com, and the one that comes here and becomes Catherine the Third, Catherine the Great. We've already had that one. We're going to have to put them out of the studio. I came to the studio today, and you saw me looking around before we got on air with the program. I was looking around because every time I come in here, I feel like I'm in a different studio. I'm going to probably do my program upstairs. I'm getting all these flowers in here. I don't know if John's trying to tell me that sending a message out or what. Are these my going away flowers?
No, just decoration. They're plastic flowers, by the way. So
they're plastic flowers.
Yeah, if we were giving somebody a send off, if we're sending somebody on a send off, we would be real flowers.
It'd be real flowers. Yeah. Probably a larger bouquet too. Get out of here.
Yeah, this is my friend Kevin Manning came in and helped paint. Well, he and his wife painted and put that border up. So
yeah, I'm really impressed. And I don't know if you saw us at the very beginning before we started the program. We have a little bit of music before we started the program, and during that time, we are just sitting here waiting to come on live. But John was telling me to move my chair around a little bit to the right. I normally sit over a little bit more to the left, but he wanted me to sit over to the right so he could catch this background here. And I was looking around and saying, "Wait a minute, what's happening in this room here?" Because the white coloring around the upper part of the wall, and all of the wall here is white. Then down this side here is kind of like, I guess that's like a gray, and in the background down below is gray also. And I came in here looking, the white painting looks a little brighter. The lights are shining bright. The camera's all over the place as usual, and a microphone is right here. And I don't know what I'm going to expect next week if they have the carpeting rolled out. I know they had not asked me to leave, but I came in today and are they throwing me out of here or what? But we're glad to have you out there, and we know that you are part of our listening ship and our viewership, and we're getting tuned in by more and more people each week, because they are finding out that we are here to do some things that nobody else is doing, trying to find a way to keep you informed by bringing information that you can't get even on some of the alphabet soup cable networks, which do news all day. And if you look at some of them, you're getting the same news no matter where you turn the channel, because they all sound like parrots out there. And I have really cut that stuff off pretty much, because I'm finding out that I can do without having them to tell me what I've already read on such things as a Drudge Report and some of the other reports out there that I get my news pretty much from the internet, and I read it for myself. I go through the reports on different networks and see what articles I want to read the headlines of the others, go through a couple of columnists, writers. There's some that I read all the time, some I read some of the time, and I think I stay abreast of everything without having to have these filters, some of whom I don't listen to. I want to mention Chris Matthews' name. That's at the top of that list.
But you know what I dislike? If you're more to the center, or the right to the center, they accuse you of being Fox News listeners. I'm like, so you got one network out there that actually sides with the right more often. It's very deliberate, I think overtly. but they're whining that not everybody's singing the same chorus.
Yeah.
That the other rest are.
There's one voice out there that doesn't sound exactly like the parakeets. And they're upset because that voice exists. They want all of them to sound the way they sound on MSNBC.
Well, see, they want diversity, all right? They want everybody to be different ethnicity, different color, but as long as you spell out the same stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta be the rainbow, but you can't have any divergence of thought. So.
Yeah, you can't have divergence. And John, remember, did you read this comment made by Thomas Sowell? He was saying that at the university, where they talk all the time, and I hear it, I hear it all the time as well. And they always talking about diversity. Got to have diversity. We got to make sure we have a diverse population. Got to make sure we have diverse ideas. And Thomas Sowell said, when you hear the professors asking and calling for diversity, ask them how many Republicans do they have in their department.
Sure, their sociology or their sociology classes or their political science.
Yeah, yes, that's right, and it wouldn't be that much different from some of the others as well. But you're right, in the social science department, it would be worse because they are dealing with the social issues and they want you to deal with them a certain way, and the way you deal with it is from the left. You come in there talking and stuff about being right or center, anywhere close to right. Just mention right. And you're out of there. And I've been in these conferences with them, and I'm sitting there as a long ranger, and I'm listening to all these voices in here. The latest of which was I was in a seminar, and they were talking about the people couldn't get a driver's license in order to, or some other form of ID in order to vote, and how that was war's me, and look at this oppression. And I'm sitting in the room there with my hand up trying to find out, have I entered the twilight zone, or is this an insane asylum? And then they're making all that. And so I had to inject myself into it. I was trying to remain calm and quiet because when I'm in the corridors of mass insanity, I try to, exercise my Fifth Amendment privilege.
The attitude I always got, too, and I didn't voice my opinion too much in school, college, because I knew the game plan. I mean, I worked there. And basically, anybody had any dissent, even people who just questioned what was already considered a status. I'm using the quote-unquote status, symbol, status, quotation mark, around quotation marks. Just a seething cauldron of hatred. Mm-hmm. As soon as you said anything that could be, even to try to be the devil's advocate, it's like displaced aggression amongst dogs. They couldn't get to their the real intended target, so they turn on each other. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, even somebody, and it's like, the stakes are so small. Mm-hmm. The thing is, they do. The educators they control the minds of the youth, and they love that. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said it. He said, if you want to control one generation, you infiltrate or you get into the classrooms of the other. I mean, he changed it up. I changed it up from what he said, but his thought basically is that they who hold the classrooms actually hold the minds of the future.
That's what they have finally come to that with a vengeance, because they're now going into the earlier grade levels. They're not waiting until they get to the high school where they're more able to enter into a zone where there's some information. They're starting out at the earlier grade levels before they have any ideas formed, and they're forming the ideas for them. And that core curriculum, I'm glad to see a lot of the states are in fact opting out of it, because the core curriculum is nothing other than disguised communism that has entered into the school system. So they're not just going to proselytize once they get to the high school and the levels of education above that. They're getting them now in the early grade levels and just bringing them up through that particular prism of understanding, and then turning them out here to do the leftist bidding. But yeah, I've gone through that, and I'm still going through it. I was at a conference that was actually it was a conference that was on the Intercommunication Network that was fan out to all the colleges throughout the United States. It was financed by George Soros, as if you're going to get anything there except the communist line. And I was in one of the forums at one of the universities, and I'm sitting there for an hour and a half. They have these presenters on the network. You're sitting there watching them on a feed that was fed into all the schools throughout all the colleges throughout the country. And I was sitting there for an hour and a half listened to what I thought was just absolute insanity. I mean, I was listening to Francis Fox Pittman, that was a downer, and the first presenter was Cornel West, and that was a downer also. And I listened to these crackpots, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I waited for a respected amount of time during the discussion time, and they said, well, we have some professors here in the audience. I want to know if they have anything to say. And so my hand went up in the air. I had a lot I wanted to say. First of all, I object to what I just got through listening to for an hour and a half. And I said that in that particular forum, and what did I want to say that for? One lady came down from another, from one of the junior colleges in the area, and she came down. I guess she felt so bad for me. She came down, and she told me, she said, you know, you have a lot of courage to be in here making the statements that you made, and I guess she felt that I might need her to carry me out on a stretcher. I mean, it was maybe getting in my face. I stood just where I was standing, and I didn't back down from it. I thought that what I said was pretty honest and accurate in terms of what the assessments were, what these persons were talking about. Everyone was pushing the communist line, and I'm not buying that. And you're not going to sell me that you can. And I've been asking this question wherever I go on these forums where these college professors are. I was down in Detroit where one of the guys was saying, and then off the record he was telling me something even worse. It was bad enough what they were saying during the presentation. Then I was talking to the guys after they finished, and we went out and took it all the way in the hallway, took it out, took it outside. and the guy actually said this. I mean, this is off the record, but the guy said outside as he's talking to me and my friend, he said, and I would suggest that you all read the Communist Manifesto. He actually said that. After I asked him, this is a college professor, and after I asked him to show me one example of where they have a country that's ever applied the ideas they're talking about, and please don't take me down to Venezuela with that conversation, because we just seen the lines wrap around the building with Maduro's government down there in Venezuela. So he said, I'm not going to answer your question about what government can you point to that would actually have someone to expedite the ideas we're talking about here, but I will tell you this: you ought to read the Communist Manifesto very carefully. And I'm sitting there like, did he say that? I mean, did he actually tell me? So, I mean, I'm just telling you that these people are in the classrooms, and they've taken over because they understand they can't come the way they came in the 1960s. They had to come. They had to take those genes off, or well, they haven't taken the genes off. At least don't have the holes in them, because that is an indication of what you're trying to do, which is bring the culture down. So they have to at least don't have holes in them like they did unless you bought them with the holes in them. They start selling you jeans with holes in them now because they understand they can sell those to you from the jump street where you can look like that and then claim that you didn't do it. But I'm talking about how they had to clean themselves up a little bit. Some of them put shirts and ties on, didn't change not one of their ideas, still quoting Karl Marx and teaching in the classroom. And when I go in there with the capitalist idea and talking about Mises, Ludwig von Mises, and also don't mention this person's name anywhere in the university. You mentioned someone like Friedman. You mentioned Friedman's name, Milton Friedman. Go into any social studies class and mention Milton Friedman, and his student Thomas Sowell, and then add the icing on the cake. I don't know if that'll be icing on the cake. Maybe you say Williams and then the icing on the cake. Then you have that as Thomas Sowell. You go ahead and say that in these departments. I was in the philosophy department. I mentioned that name. The guy, I thought I had slapped the guy, and I think he wanted to ask me to get out. I mean, it's like that, and so you get used to it, and you kind of smile to yourself and say, "Look, more of the same. So what are you surprised about?" And you're telling yourself, "Calm down, calm down. Don't go off on anybody because you don't have tenure."
I like to ask these people who are communist leaning and they want to embrace that, It's like, well, don't you know? I mean, at what point do you ever get past the point of violence and extremism with this, revolution or whatever it advocates? It never gets beyond that point. It's like, it seems that every culture basically, that the violence against the individuals who have any issues or don't seem to be moving fast enough or executed. See, that's one thing I never liked about the left. They think themselves as artists, and everybody else is lumps of clay that's got to be worked on. And only they have the right to decide what's there or not.
Yeah,
that's what I always hated about the left.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to watch that unfold. I do a radio program, John. We do a debate, point counterpoint type of thing, which I do like the people I'm around, and I wanted to give them some credit for being nice people and all of that. Just brain dead. But I do a debate back and forth Wednesday mornings from 8:30 to 9, and it's really interesting in terms of how the left tries to talk down to you, because and they've actually said, shut up, because they have the answer. And what we have, and what they notice we don't have, is that we don't have our notepads out, and we're not writing down, what they say, so we can learn it for ourselves, because we don't know these things. Only they have the information. And what are we talking about? We have a different point of view, so that can't be right, because it's not the party line. And how did we learn this stuff? And who are your instructors? And what books have you read? And I'm trying to figure out what books have they read, except the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, one written, the Communist Manifesto, which was Karl Marx's treatise, and Das Kapital, written in 1869, which is more of his insanity. And they're going to come in there quoting that. And if I'm not quoting those two pieces of nonsense, then somehow I just didn't get it. Now I took political science. I was a pre-law student. My major was pre-law, and so I took a lot of political science, and I took almost all the social studies classes they had on the campus where I was in undergraduate school. And then went there and got more brainwashing when I was working on one of my masters, and of course they were writing all over my papers and telling me get back in the library because you didn't read Karl Marx, whose book came out in 1848. So you're not grounded enough in terms of all the political science you need to know, because there's not one thing in your footnotes that said you read, Karl Marx's writings. And where's Engels in here? So I had to get around that kind of thing on both the undergraduate level, and it was not as bad on the graduate level as I found it on the graduate level. And I won't name all the schools I went to, but I will tell you this: I went to all the main ones here in the state of Michigan, and there's not one campus. There's a major campus that I haven't been on and haven't taken some classes at, because I was trying to find out where can I go to escape this noise, and I found I can't go anywhere. The noise is everywhere. But so what they would do for me, though, is drive me out of the classroom back to the library, because I had to go back and check my information that I was carrying in the room to find out there was any validation of the points I had thought that I had pretty much mastered in undergraduate school. Now they want to change my whole orientation. I had to go back and do some research of that which I already done some research on, to find out, what were the sources that these persons that I was reading had used for what they had concluded. And I found out that I didn't have to change a whole lot. And I keep asking these guys on the left, the extreme left, for some validation. I will mention this person, because I think he needs a special mention, although he's deceased right now, having written this bad book called The Reinvention of Malcolm X. And I don't know how he could write that book about the things he wrote in that book. It's just one page after another of this guy coming off of conjectural claims. I don't know what evidence this guy was. I don't know what evidence was in the book, and I pretty much read everything that's out there on that subject. And I thought I would be able to read, since it's the latest book out on this iconic figure, whom very few of the writers that I've read know what they're talking about. But I thought I would be able to read something from this guy named Manning Marable. I don't know why I thought that when I realized he was working at Columbia University. And what can I learn from anybody that's up there at that school, turning out the kind of graduates they're turning out, where everybody that comes out of there is, nothing but a Marxist. Half the ones that on the campus, if not more, are nothing but Marxists who are churning out our journalists from that university, and look what they're doing out here. I would like to know what percentage of the ones at the MSNBC took at least one course there, and how many of them got degrees from Columbia University, which turns out a lot of our journalists in this country, and that's why, I won't say that's why, but that maybe explains why we're getting this slanted journalism that we're seeing on these networks. We can't even discern, after they get through telling us what the facts are, we can't even discern anymore what the information is, because it's so slanted. And then now, not only is it slanted in terms of what they say about that which they report, but they don't report anything that they don't want us to hear about. You have to go out and ferret it out yourself. You think you're informed because they are reporting the news, then you're not going to be informed for long, because they're not even going to say some things about what's happening in the news. And we see that in terms of the IRS. I mean, when that guy went up there and said that 6 different computers crashed. 6 different computers in the IRS crashed and lost everything that was on those computers for 2 years on 6 different computers. And because they couldn't recover what was on the computers, please sit down for this part, they had to destroy the computers because it was no more use. Now, I guess they didn't have anything else on there that, I guess everything had to crash if there's no more use, because why would you destroy it? I'm asking this rhetorically, and I don't think that I'm asking this because I don't have an answer to it. But why would you destroy the computers if the crash was just over the 2-year period? Did it have anything there then that would go back further than that, or anything that came up close to the present date? But because they had lost that, then the computer's not in more use. I mean, the taxpayers can buy some more. It's not coming out of their pockets. So what's the deal? What's the problem here? And they have to destroy the computers, and they bring the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service Director, the newest one, having gotten rid of the other crooks who are using the IRS as a sledgehammer against anybody that dares say anything that is not beholden to I want to shine the shoes of those in power. And they were going to make it, he's going to make it clear that although this occurred, you should not be offended as you were offended when there was 18 minutes of the tape missing from the tapes in the Oval Office under Richard Nixon. Just 18 minutes. You shouldn't be mad about 6 computers crashing, which had a whole lot more information on it than 18 minutes. You should only be upset about that which occurred than Watergate. And has anybody mentioned Watergate with the IRS? Of course not. So what are y'all upset about, and what's the problem here? There's no problem, because if it were a problem, then Watergate would have to be mentioned and Richard Nixon may have to be brought into it. And because it wasn't, then the Washington Post, which resembles today the 3 blind mice, hands over their eyes, hands over their mouth, and hands over their ears, and then no hands will come to typing anything. You heard of the good hands people? These are the no hands people. Because they're not going to report anything that makes it seem like there's an ineptitude on the part of those in power on the right. Don't forget now, all the problems belong on the right. And if you don't remember the song and dance routine, don't forget anything that goes on that is attributable to anybody during the Obama administration, it's got to be Bush's fault because Bush somehow didn't leave. We thought he left, but nope, he didn't leave on the 20th of January, 2009. That man has actually served, let's see, longer, well, not as long, but almost as long as Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Because unlike Roosevelt, who was elected to 4 terms, he died during the 4th term, Obama has not started serving yet. Obama is only in the office ceremonially, but Bush is in office running the affairs of the country. And so therefore, and I don't know why we haven't impeached him, but Bush is served 2 of his own terms, and when you know it, he's serving 1 term that he wasn't elected to. We ain't throwing him out yet. And we elected Obama a 2nd term, and guess what's happening even now as we speak? Bush is still in there. No doubt about it. It is still Bush. And we saw it last week when ISIS, which stands for the Islamic State in Iraq and everywhere else. It's Iraq and Syria. But let's be honest here. Let's be honest here for a change. Because I think a lot of what we're doing right now, even unbeknownst to the leadership, is nothing but a smokescreen. You can keep talking about, ISIS in Iraq and all the problems they have in terms of what's going on in Afghanistan. But I got to tell you something. I've been bringing this book to the studio for the last, several weeks. Here's the name of the book. It's called America Alone, The End of the World as We Know It, written by Mark Steyn. And I'll tell you something. What Mark Steyn has talked about in this book here is absolutely frightening. Because you can keep talking about Iraq and that over in the Middle East, but you know what is happening? You're growing the terrorists on your own soil. They are in America, and they are in Europe. And Europe goes first because the demographics will indicate it goes first. But America is traveling at a slower space, or slower speed, I should say. But the inevitable consequences are not going to be different if we continue to go down this political path of political correctness and don't recognize what's going on right here in these United States of America.
You know what I'd like to ask these the feminists and all these other women's rights issues and the reproductive rights. Yet they're not seeing the writing on the wall. They're okay with all the embracing Islam and what. Okay, I disagree with you guys, but I never went around trying to threaten to kill you. You guys will not be able to have your way of life underneath the Islamic caliphate. Okay, you guys are ridiculous to believe that this is not something to be concerned about. It's not race. I'm so tired of charged racism. I'm so tired of that. I mean, you're opposing a political and religious ideology. There's a vast difference between that and hating people for their skin color.
Of course it is.
The left is insane. They think that they can mix this together and make a good amalgamation or something. It's insanity.
It is insanity. The left. I didn't recognize this until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but liberalism is a form. It is a mental disease, and I used to hear blacks say, blacks can't be conservative because they don't have anything to conserve. Well, the reason why they don't have anything to conserve is because they're liberals. I mean, that's the problem. You go to any place where liberals are, and that's where you find poverty, and they can't figure this stuff out. Now let me say this. They talk. When I came to the studio today, they were talking about the election down in Mississippi, the senatorial race, and they haven't had a senator yet in this election cycle. In the primaries we've had, unfortunately, none of them have been thrown out in the primaries. McConnell got back in there, and then we had to suffer what happened in South Carolina Somebody help me out with this one. Up there, down there where we had in South Carolina, where Lindsey Graham was running for his seat, he was opposed by some people in Tea Party, and he was emboldened by, I think, he's swatting at flies here and got his candidacy through the primary. And of course, the Tea Party won't listen to me and telling them that what you need to do here is a stratagem, taking a page out of Black America, which they won't do, and that is, let's have the Tea Party go and vote for somebody who claims to be a Democrat, that rather than a Democrat that claims he's a Republican. But now that's too extreme. But that's what I'm calling for. But outside of Thad Cochran down in Mississippi, running against Chris McDaniel, and it looks like Thad Cochran there's some problems here. Having that runoff, they're having a runoff of the primary because they had a three-way race, and neither one of the candidates was running, given the fact there were three ways dividing the vote up. Neither one of them had 50% of the vote. But the problem for Cochran is that he had less votes than Chris McDaniel had, but they're pulling out all stops down there, and all eyes are on that particular contest because the Tea Party is in there, and if they can, in fact, have enough people in the Senate after what happened in Virginia, then you're not going to be able to talk about they are a non-entity like you've been doing, because they had two victories with McConnell and this other Democrat and Republican Party, Lindsey Graham. But if Cochran goes down, then they got a problem here with the Tea Party, because then they flex their muscle in a senatorial contest, and unlike the Eric Cantor, which was in the House, he went down. But if you get a person that's been in the Senate for 36 years like Cochran, he goes down, then, ladies and gentlemen, we got a new game here. But don't put all your marbles in the contest down in Mississippi. There's a contest going on that I wrote about today with this other person. He's a member of the House. I think you know where I'm going with this one, because he needs to go to it. Just had his 84th birthday this month. And you would think these guys would recognize that if you can hardly walk to your seat and you can't remember why you're sitting down once you get there, and you're sitting in the chair sleeping because you can't stay awake more than 5 minutes because you need a nap, you would think that these guys have enough honor and could lose enough of their addiction to power to say, look, I've been here, and I'm talking here about Charles Rangel. You would think that, well, you wouldn't think that. You would hope, let me put it that way, you would hope that they would have enough integrity to understand, if I can't remember why I'm here, I'm just doing it by sheer number of years of having done it. I'm doing it through repetition. And I just remember having done this over the course of 40, which would be 40, he's been in there 42 years. I'm talking about Rangel. When he's up for re-election, he'd be trying to get a 23rd term in the House of Representatives. Already got 44 years in there, as a matter of fact, 44 years. It'd be 44 years as of January of next year. Now, you would think those guys would have, no, you wouldn't think. You would hope that there'd be enough integrity. You would hope there would be enough integrity. You would not think there'd be enough integrity, because there's been an integrity over the course of their careers. But you would hope there'd be enough integrity that those guys would say, well, the benefit for me is I won't die at my desk, and the benefit to the voters is I can get out of the way, so that whatever I'm blocking and have been blocking over the course of 4 decades, I can stop blocking that, and at least have somebody else come and block it. At least that'll be a change, because not too much more is going to change in Washington until we go back in terms of changing the way we ordain the Constitution to be the law of the land in this country. And right now, they've ordained it out of here, and it's ordained not to be looked at in terms of coming to grips about anything that's going on in the country, which they don't like. And that's as far as all three branches of government are concerned, not just for the Congress of the United States. None of them have respect for the Constitution. That includes the Supreme Court. It's dismissed there too. But you would think then that in Wrangell's case, and do not take your eyes off of what's happening in what is now the 13th district in New York. Used to be the 15th district, but through immigration and through redistricting of the districts in New York, Wrangell is now in the 13th district, not the 15th like it once was when he inherited that seat from Adam Clayton Powell, whom blacks didn't throw out of there in a timely manner. It was only 71 that his seat became available after him misrepresenting Harlem all those years. But he would holler, enough to make people think he was saying something, thought that they were doing some representation. He'd holler at the voters and get on a yacht, and he and his girlfriend would go to Bermuda. And he's on a yacht somewhere, and they up there meeting, and he over there, his constituents, he's not even in there representing his constituents. Not that the enemy are doing that, but he wouldn't even show up to make it even appear that way, which says about the constituency that Wrangell inherited. But that constituency has been changed. And what was once a majority black district is no longer a majority black district. It's now a majority Hispanic district. And the person that's opposing him is from the Dominican Republic. And Wrangell, who only beat this guy, this is a repeat, although he got other candidates in it as well, and that probably ensures we're going to have the runoff election there as well in the 13th district in New York. But he only beat this guy that's running against him again. It probably is going to be a runoff with the two of them. And is that he only beat him by 1,000 votes in 2012. So there could be some problems there too. And we need to watch that election. And the reason why I'm watching it is I want to see what level of awakeness do we have to have in this country, and what kind of awakeness do we have right now, where the voters are now becoming more mature and more aware of the fact that we cannot change Washington unless we start changing some of the personalities that we're sitting up there. I mean, what part of that is too hard to understand? And I wrote an article today, on Facebook. I try to write before I come to the studio so that I can have that cleared up before I get here about what I'm going to write about. I don't want to do it after I leave the studio because then I'm just repeating myself on the air. I'd much rather say it there and repeat it over the airways rather than repeat it here where everybody gets and he's repeating the same thing in writing. So I'm just verbalizing some of what I've already written. And what I said is that if Wrangell wins and if that Cochran wins, it may well be that we got to amend the Constitution and then pay attention to it once we do it, and to read where we are going to impeach voters. Put a provision in there for that. We're going to impeach these voters that go to the polls and continue to vote for more and more of the same people going back and back and back again into the halls of power to do what? To do what they've been doing.
Well, you know what my thing is? I think the bulk of the people are so embittered because they can't find jobs and they don't like their own lives. They just want politicians in there who are willing to take more and more of the people's paycheck who are working and hand it over to them. They basically, the left is not going to be happy until they get everybody's paycheck in their hands. They might give you a few bucks to play around with, but they want to take care of you. And you're just supposed to labor and let them have the fruits of your labor. That's what their goal is, to control
I agree with you 100%.
lives.
You're paying attention to it, John. I'm trying to get the other people to pay attention to it. My whole reason for being on Facebook, and I'm on Facebook, every day, and I'm on there. I write my articles off of line, and then I come on and then I post what I've written offline on Word or on one of the document sites, and I import it into the Facebook site. But the reason why I do that, and I take some time in terms of thinking about what I'm going to write and where I can have an impact based upon something that's in the news. And the reason why I do it is I'm trying to get others to have the understanding that you have, John, that you have a tremendous understanding of what's going on. I'm trying to give other person that don't have that understanding maybe a way of looking at some things that they're not paying attention to at the present moment, but need to pay attention to and get a handle on, so we can all begin to understand the gravity of the situation that we are in. Some of which is produced in our own hands. We don't have ultimate power to go to Washington and do what Jindal. John, did you see what Jindal said in Louisiana? This I think it was yesterday.
I've read it, and I'm right now escaping what he said.
Yeah, let me tell you what he said. Governor Jindal, who has impressed me more and more, I must say, every time he speaks, every time he reports what it was said behind closed doors, when we go up to the White House and get embarrassed with the president, tell him, I don't have the confidence in y'all, so I'm going to do y'all job. But he said that he said yesterday, I think it was, I sort of read it yesterday, that the people are getting tired of Washington to the point where there's more and more of a chance and a probability that people are getting ready to rise up against the federal government in this country. I knock on wood for that one. But
the thing is, if they do that, though, I think the government will just bring foreign troops in and then massacre everybody. They are so hell-bent. The guys that run this country know how the people are feeling. They're hearing it. Mm-hmm. They're just telling you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
You shouldn't think that way. You got the wrong information, but they're not offering. And then as soon as they're itching, they're trying to push and provoke attacks, or not attacks, but any kind of violent action, because they're salivating. Look at what they've outfitting to their average cop with, and the abuse with the cops in this country. Over 5,000 civilians dead at the hands of cops since 9/11. Who the hell are the terrorists?
Yeah, they're the terrorists, and they're trying to aim our attention elsewhere. And I'll say a word about that later on in terms of some applications of that, in terms of this whole thing about Iraq and what we look at with ISIS and things like that, because that's only part of the story. But what they cannot stand is an awakened citizenry that is in the proportions that we are in this country, because there are 300 and some odd million people in the United States. And Catherine, it's good to see you out there. I know you're ready to go forward, and I'm gonna be out of y'all's way exactly on time. Make sure that we bring Victoria's Black History Corner that comes up at 3:30. And Catherine's already here to take my seat. I think she's telling me to get out right now, but I ain't leaving until this program is over, so that you don't have to worry about that. But I think that what they don't want is an awakened citizenry, where we have people awakened to the tune of the numbers that they have to deal with. If we all are awakened and focused upon what it is that we must do and who we must do it in the name of, because it's not going to be in the name of Washington that we have to do it. We have to do it because Washington has to be, guided out of our way. And so Governor Jindal, who is very impressive, I'm sorry if he didn't do a good job in being the spokesman after they had, Jindal, who spoke one time after the president had given his State of the Union address, and they had Jindal speak on behalf of the Republican Party. He didn't do a good job, but he was not as prolific speaker as Marco Rubio. And then here's Rubio got to go get some water, and they had to make a mockery of that, everybody getting a jug of water to him to make mockery of him getting some water to clear his throat, as if that's something to be a major problem. But he didn't do a good job in terms of following the president at one occasion and then giving the Republican side of things. But he is making a lot of sense in what he's saying right now. And one thing that he said was that the people are, in fact, getting ready to rise up about all this oppression they're getting out of the nation's capital, and they're right. We don't have any representation in the nation's capital. And every time we have a chance to challenge them in terms of these primaries, and that's what's happening in New York and in Mississippi, where they're being challenged in the primaries, we need to support that effort. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow, because they got an election in both sites coming up. Tomorrow is going to be the election of between Thad Cochran and Chris McDaniel. And then the one with Rangel is also on the 24th. We're going to see how that comes out. And if they can't win those with the kind of representation they've had, and Rangel was in 2010. Rangel was accused of 13 ethics violation in the House. And under the old formula, the old demographics in the 15th district, they returned him with 80% of the vote after the news was out that this man had been accused of 13 ethics violations, of which he was found culpable in 11 of them. And they saw fit to return this guy to, not only return him to his position, but in the general election, the man had 80% of the vote. And so last year, didn't have any scandals. I mean, not last year, in the last election, 2012, he didn't have any scandals, so there wasn't anything to remember. And so they gave him, he only won by 1,000 votes. And so let's see what they do in this election right here. If they're going to still drink the Kool-Aid and have the wool pull over there, not over their eyes, but over their entire head. Let's see what happens in this election. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in both the 13th district in New York and what happens down in Mississippi with Thad Cochran. Both of these men need to go. And if the electorate is on a roll, they threw Eric Cantor out, so that's a plus. In Virginia, let's see what they do in this campaign. Here, I said I was going to say something about this charade, which they don't even recognize as a charade. They're talking about ISIS over there in Iraq and how this imperils us. And they're saying that, if we don't stop what they're doing over there, and they're talking about maybe they're not trying to prop up the government in Iraq because they're not supporting the government there. But they said, what we're doing here, anything we do, we're doing it because of the threat that ISIS posed to us in terms of a national security threat. Well, we kind of know that they're not propping up the government of Iraq because the only thing this president props up is a government that has Islam pretensions. That's why that's why every secular leader in the Islamic world is in trouble, but nobody that's in the mullahs are in trouble with his administration. And none of them have been overthrown. Only the ones been overthrown are the secularist leaders in the Islamic world. And that includes Saddam Hussein. But you see, part of it, I look at even this discussion about ISIS as being a cover-up. And some of it is a cover behind their own backs because they don't understand the gravity in some ways of what they're doing themselves. But I look at this as part of the cover-up that occurred after 9/11, which 2 years later we responded to 9/11 militarily. But the response to me was a cover-up because what we did was go over there in Iraq with our military forces so that nobody would ask the question, as we were being told that this man's over here in a cave planning the attack upon the United States. Nobody was able to ask the question, what does it got to do with, this is Tina Turner, a little takeoff of her song. What's that got to do with anything? They're over in a cave planning something. So what? This was not somebody coming out of those caves and attacking this country. We weren't supposed to see that. And I think putting those troops that Bush did on the ground in Iraq was a cover-up. The cover-up what? The cover-up how did they get here? Because you can tell me until the cows come home that they were in a cave in Afghanistan and you are planning and plotting against the planes, our planes by the way, where they learn how to fly those planes in the school here in this country. And your response to those persons that were flying our planes after learning how to fly them at our airplane pilot school, never did learn to land anything, but that didn't cause any question. I mean, sure, you just want to learn how to fly. You don't learn how to land a plane. Why would you want to do that? So, I mean, I'll tell you why. Because you plan to use a plane as a missile. I mean, this is not chemistry. But they want to take the troops, and rather than surrounding the borders with the troops, because they can plan until the cows come home in Afghanistan, as long as they can't get in here and can't come by railway or trailway or airplane, according to the song, then what difference does it make? I guess I agree on that one with Miss Hillary Clinton. That's the only thing I agree with her on. What difference does it make? The question is, what is the homeland security looking like? And I hate to tell you this because then you're going to be really overwhelmed, but securing the homeland doesn't sound too American to me. They slipped that in there on us too. Homeland security. Where have we, John? Where have we heard the word homeland? Where have you heard the term securing the homeland? You ever heard that before? I mean, not before they use it here. Where did you hear before that?
I never heard it until after 2001.
Have you heard it in Germany?
I thought it was 2011.
The homeland, the Dutch land?
No, I mean, you don't do that. I mean, it's like, they say, they'd say the fatherland. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that was an Nazi.
Yeah. They slipped in here the czars. See, let me tell you what we're doing in this country. We are thinking backwards in this country right now. If they say things like czars, you think back to your grandparents' time. Because your thought pattern goes back to Russia. That's your parents' time. Because they heard czars only in terms of it being used with Russia. They're using it now and it applies to Washington, D.C.
And the thing is, none of that's permitted by the Constitution. The
None of
role of what a czar or what their intention by using that term czar, or none of it's like we're just basically saying we're taking over everything. We're becoming a tyranny, and we're just putting different names to
Yeah,
it.
but the reason I asked you that question is I wanted to let you see here that there are some subtleties going on that you're not supposed to see. And as aware as you are, if you didn't see it, I can imagine what it is in the general population, because you see a lot of it. But the homeland security, I tell you what's missing in that. I mean, they say, what's wrong with that picture? Well, everything's wrong with the picture. But what's wrong with it in particular is that you don't hear America in it. You could have said this, for example, which would have been eye-opening. You could have said that we're going to protect America from any further attacks. But that brings attention to then where did the attacks come from? So you want to make it appear that you're protecting the homeland, but the homeland is not protected. You know why? Because these jihadists didn't come from the caves. They're right here in your midst. And that's what this book is about, called America Alone, the End of the World as We Know It. Because what we are not understanding and what we're not recognizing is that they are incubating this problem on the soil where the people are who are not yet Islamic, but the trends are in place to bring that result about. We can talk about Iraq all you want to, but I think that is a distraction, even if our leadership members don't know it, and they don't know a lot. I have some friends that think that everything is about conspiracy and that they're plotting this in some room. I take what Walter Williams says about it in his formula for why there's an impossibility, too many moving parts. And I take what Thomas Sowell says about it as well in terms of where his argument is that you put people in the same room, it looks like a conspiracy, but you put people in the same room, you get the same idea. I mean, they all think the same way. But I come in a different way. These people are not that smart. If they were that smart, you wouldn't have the problem. They don't want all the problems they see right now, but what they can't understand is that the environment creates the problems. That whenever force is used to solve any problem, you can guarantee it will create other problems, and it will never do what it is intended to do. I don't care in what dimension you go into, whether it's minimum wage laws designed to raise the wages up. I tell you right now, that's impossible to be done by the use of force. The wages will go down. Now, not the wages of the ones who will maintain their jobs, but how many person would that be? Because with the minimum wage jobs, it's making it illegal for anybody to hire anybody. I mean, that's what minimum wage laws are. I mean, people say, well, the reason why the minimum wage laws hurt the employment, it always drives unemployment up. Yes, it does. But why does it drive it up? It drives unemployment up because the government makes it illegal for them to hire anybody. Let's say you got a job now at $7.25, just raising in one of the places there to $15 an hour. Do you know it's illegal to now hire them at $7.25 an hour? Because the government's made it illegal to hire someone. That's what governments do. They bring force and they force the employer to act in a way in which it would not normally act if the government was not in there forcing the business community to act in a certain way. And they make it illegal to hire you at a wage that the employer can afford based upon the minimalist kinds of circumstance that they're dealing with, based upon these fiat laws passed by these corrupt, crooked, and criminal and mindless politicians, because all of that goes in the same sentence. Because they're not that smart and they're not able to sit in a room anywhere and plan anything. Most of them can't think their way out of a wet paper bag. I hate to tell you this, but they're not that smart. And your salvation basically will be found only in one particular room of this big mansion that they're in, called Congress, with the gym downstairs and cafeteria down the hallway, and they can get some sandwiches, come in there and drink coffee, and stay awake to do us in with the legislation they're passing, where everything is outlawed in this country. But if you look at how we're going to restrain government, the only way to get better government, the only way you can do that is get the government's hands off of every particular in the country, because there's no other way to do it. The more government is involved, the less anything is possible to go on in terms of things that have to be resolved in this country. That's employment, that's honesty, and anything else. And I do want to mention this before I get off the air today. I want to mention this article that I brought to the studio, which just came out about an hour before we start taping today. And that article is called Homeland Security Chief Warns Parents on Child Immigration Surge. Now, I think we had something else uncovered here that everybody's talking about. And here's what it made me understand. You see, these children, and this is the eye-opener here, and it hasn't been said anywhere before. I want to read this to you, and I'm going to make a point that anybody's made here about this and what it means. It says, Homeland Security. Now, Homeland Security, the Dutch land, the homeland. Protect the. Where have we heard that before? Protect the homeland. We have never heard that in American history. Where's America in that? Well, they're getting you away from thinking in those terms, aren't they? The czars. What is that? That's Russia. Dutch land, the homeland. What is that? That's Germany. Where's America in any of this? Well, Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, warned Central America. Now listen to this now. Warned Central America parents against sending their children to the United States illegally. Folks, I got to tell you something here. I couldn't understand until I began to recognize that why I was getting reports from my friends who had gone to Mexico, how those immigrants would be coming out of Mexico to this country, with the reports I was getting from those Americans who moved down there, a lot of them, whom I'm in contact with. And I couldn't understand their reports and these immigrants coming out of Mexico into this country. Well, guess what? It finally is clear. They're not coming from Mexico. And Jay Johnson, you didn't intend to uncover that, but that's what you uncovered. These immigrants are coming through Mexico from Central America. And Mexico won't let them stay there. And they know it. And that's why they're not sending them to Mexico. They're sending them to this country right here. Because here is where the thugs are. And that is our problem. Now, tomorrow, you can do something about it. It won't be everything needs to be done. It won't be everything in one fell swoop, because it won't happen that way. It'll be happening in incremental steps. And tomorrow we're watching Mississippi, but not just Mississippi, with Thad Cochran. We're watching the 13th District in New York also, and elsewhere where these incumbents are running, because we've got to get a handle on this government at this time, right now, and we can do some of it during the primary and the rest of it in November. Okay, I think we're finished for the day. We're ready for Sartorius Black History Corner that comes on at 3:30. I have to rush home and see it, so I'll be leaving out of here in a few minutes to rush home to watch the program live. Until next week, I want you to, throughout the difficult moments we're having in this country and elsewhere, to follow your dream. And don't forget, if you don't follow your dream, that you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.